Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast, and welcome back to you too. Ben, how are you?
Mate, I'm sort of a little sad. Sort of last episode of the winter series. I mean, these people have been so generous with their sharing, so vulnerable. We've talked about their numbers. We've talked about, their challenges. We've talked about their plans. So it's just, that's why the job we do is so rewarding. I'll be honest. That's why I love what I do. And sharing that information to build confidence for others to take action. Can't get any better, mate. Can't get any better.
I agree, mate. We got another ripper conversation today, but I'm with you. It's come around too quick. What I want to do, shout out, is say to folks, the idea that we set the scene at the beginning of the year, Ben. We say work all year, working out your money smart, so that you can come onto the summer series. I'm going to say to folks, if you have resonated with some of the ideas that you heard on the winter series, maybe set a goal to come and share your story with us next year on the winter series as well, because we would love for you to, as a wise man once said, Ben, plan to become what you plan to become. So I think it's really important that people see the message here is the importance of actually having a condensed period of time to actually look over the horizon and see some of the things that are going to come your way, so that you can actually walk with a North Star and see exactly what it is. Nothing's perfect, but it gives you a very good roadmap of where you want to go. So just want to encourage folks to maybe set themselves a goal, because this is genuinely the very best part of our year when we get to talk to people about their transformations, which is really good. Today is another ripper, Ben. We have got one lined up. We cover a lot. There is not only financial transformation in this story, there's also just I don't want to give too much away, Ben, but there's some real life troughs and peaks in this conversation as well. So without any further ado, Ben, let's cut to the conversation that you and I recently had with Alex Cronshaw. All right, Ben, we've got a very special guest today. We are chatting with Alex Cronshaw. As a TPC listener, gone through a planning process recently, very willing to share with our audience what that looks like. So first of all, welcome to the Property Couch, Alex.
Thank you. Thanks, Bryce and Ben. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure. We are excited to dive into your thought process and the planning process and everything in between, Alex. But before we get there, we want to start off with the very beginning. We want to have some idea of what it's like for you growing up. What were the conversations like over the dinner table, under your roof, with your family, and how you formed your habits around money?
Yeah, so I guess I think I sort of have to say my story is probably a bit of two stories with myself and Sabrina, my wife. A little bit different. I guess I was quite lucky. I grew up in a sort of relatively well-off family in a nice part of Adelaide here. We didn't really have any sort of trouble or issues with money. Both my mum and dad worked full-time. They worked quite hard, both of them as well, and generally, got their promotions as they went. Then I guess as we got a little bit older, the money was never really discussed between my brother and myself and my mum and dad. It was almost a bit of a subject that it was almost considered a bit rude, I think, in our family to be sort of talking about how money is generated and how much of it is generated and where it goes. We were sort of told to, I guess, mind our own business a little bit, but we were quite lucky in the fact that we had a good upbringing. We had the disposable income there. I sort of know that now, and they used it well for us. So I couldn't really complain as we sort of grew up. Probably changed a little bit when I got a little bit older. The parents ended up separating, and I guess money was probably a little bit tighter then once that sort of happened. I probably didn't take it the best. I grew up probably doing the things I definitely shouldn't have. And I was always taught while I was a kid to save. We'd always save our pocket money and do little jobs here and there. And I remember saving for scooters and things like that as I was growing up. My brother and I both did the same thing. So I always had a relatively good handle on saving when I wanted to. I guess when I got a little bit older, the money probably went in the wrong direction and got put into things it probably shouldn't have, and definitely didn't help me future down the track. Sabrina's was a little bit different, I suppose. She sort of told me that while she didn't go wanting for anything, she knew that they didn't have as much money growing up as a family. They're a little bit tighter. She remembers things where she may not have got what other kids were getting or anything along those lines. So, but then it kind of did the flip that she ended up being quite good with money later down the track, especially after working in banks. So it's kind of two opposite ends of the spectrum, I suppose.
Helpful when you can bring that merging together, and we'll get to that story because that is an important part of the planning process when you're trying to bring that alignment together. I want to sort of reach in, Alex. You've listened to the podcast and you hear our summer series, and we've had some themes around when relationship breakups happen and you know how that can change your money habits and behaviours. And it could be psychological in the terms of, a difficult separation and you're in your formative years and you're looking for things that make you happier because the family unit isn't necessarily there. Can you lean in on that and see if upon reflection of what you were doing, was that because you were trying to counter for a void in one part of your life? Like, when your mum and dad broke up, did that really, hit you pretty hard?
Yeah, it definitely did. I think it was in year 8 when I moved into high school. So probably at that time that's, is a bit of a tricky time as it was anyway.
Yeah.
Dad, I didn't really speak with Dad for quite a long time, not generally through my own choice, but it's sort of just the way it panned out. Mum did an amazing job sort of looking after me and my brother when we sort of went through all of this.
Yeah.
We definitely didn't show her the respect we should have for the amount of work that she put in, and she definitely helped sort of keep us afloat. And again, we weren't necessarily wanting for anything. She looked after us very, very well, but it just meant that we were probably eager to go out and get our own money. So we had a bit of independence, and we could get out a little bit and do our own thing. And again, we probably made some silly choices about the way we spend our money and spent our time. But I mean, all kudos at the at the end of the day for Mum and what she did. She really helped us sort of going by herself, which was really well done by her.
Good on you, Mum. We love you. Thank you. Thank you for seeing past our errors of our formative years.
Absolutely.
I'll give her a big hug next time you see her as well.
Any examples you can talk to there, Alex, around where you did sort of put your money in areas, quote, that you shouldn't have?
Well, I guess growing up as a boy, I had the car, and I'd save and use lay-by, which people probably don't even know what it is these days, the younger kids, but use lay-by to get things to do up the stereo in the cars and all of that, which was kind of just a bit of growing up. But then it was a lot of going out and I guess being a little bit naughtier and running around and probably doing things that would be frowned upon, and I'd definitely frown upon if my kids were to go and do it.
Rite of passage, I think they call it, isn't it?
Yeah, rite of passage. That's a good way to put it. But we probably took it a little bit too far. When I started getting into my teenage years, we did like to do a little bit of travel when we could, and I made all the terrible mistakes of taking out loans for cars and then taking out loans to go on a holiday, and gradually building it up. And then they'd say, well, do you want to borrow a little bit more money? And yeah, okay, if you're offering it, why not? So that sort of thing. It was a bit of a vicious cycle, which I'm glad we're out of now, but it didn't really set me up too well for when I was sort of out of home, started living out of home.
I was wondering whether credit was going to get called in there, because lay-by, for those people who are born post Afterpay, buy now, pay later type stuff.
You pay first, then get the goods, not pay, get the goods and then pay later.
So lay-by did have a bit of a delayed gratification piece to it, right? Because you didn't use debt to actually get it. But the point you're making there is that then led into credit cards and need it now and then worry about the payment later. So I think that's a really big lesson for anyone, is like, I think the whole concept of putting money away and saving for it is lay-by, right? Whether that's going into a savings bucket, a virtual savings bucket in your bank account, or whether it's, ultimately being put down on a good that you're holding in store, makes perfect sense. But in this need it now, want it now, get it now, instant gratification world that we're moving towards, those types of muscle memories and behaviors aren't being taught. And so, that's a great lesson. And as you say, you came out the other side. And so I probably, for me, is when did you realize that if it was to change, it was going to be you? Or did you meet Sabrina and she came in and said, that's not how you do it. This is how you smash debt. This is how you get, the right way. Was it self-taught, or did you get some help?
No, definitely not self-taught. I can't take any credit for that. No, it was when we did get together. It was a bit of an interesting story in that Sabrina had done quite well with her family. She actually bought a block with her sister on the advice of her dad, who had been taking money from their paycheck for when they started working full time. And they bought a house together. They demolished it and subdivided and built 2 houses. And this would have been when Sabrina was 23, 24, and her sister would have been 21, 22. So
wonderful.
He helped, my father-in-law helped them by doing an own builder as well. So they obviously saved a lot of cost by doing that. So she had that set up. When I came in, I essentially had nothing. I guess I'd always planned, always just thought I was going to be a lifelong renter. I met Sabrina. We came in. We both brought a little bit of bad debt. She obviously had the productive debt with the house as well. Yep. I think the first step that we really made when we realised that we were getting quite serious was to actually refinance and consolidate all these external debts to get it into one, to reduce the amount of total payments that we were paying. I still had,
and on a lower interest rate,
and on a much lower interest rate.
Secured against resi, so lower interest rate. Yep. You don't want to drag it out over the term of the home loan for the 30 years. So if you can bring that interest rate down, but smash that debt,
yep,
that is an awesome way of consolidating and getting rid of it.
Yeah, that was a good lesson for both of us. So that really helped us out to start building up a little bit. I probably had some bad habits. I guess, to be full disclosure, I had quite a significant problem with alcohol in particular. When things started getting, it came quite good when we met, and then it went downhill a little bit. Once we had the kids, we've got a now just turned 4 and about to turn 3-year-old now. When we had the girls, I started to sort of peter it out and make a little bit more sense for the sake of the family unit, I suppose. But then it did come back with a little bit of a vengeance on me a little while ago, and I think now I'm 474 days without a single drink at all. So we sort of found that was the best thing for it. Moderation wasn't really a word that existed in my vocabulary. So when I try to do something, I do it properly. And now I'm actually trying to do the proper things properly.
Awesome, mate. That's a great story. And thank you for sharing that, because that's showing some serious vulnerability about, some challenges you have with addiction. And, and as you're saying, you've been able to come the other challenges around debt and behavioural changes. So, all credit to you, mate, in terms of doing that.
Thank you. It was tough, but definitely worth it.
Yeah. And there's probably some people listening to this who could probably learn something from you as well. So just from the fact that you spoke up and said about it might prompt someone else to talk about it too, Alex. So well done. Can I go back to something you said before around, excuse me, when you were growing up, that it was rude. You said it was rude talking about money. How did that manifest? And were many things talked about when you were growing up? Everyday things as well, but more specifically around, how did you get the sense that it was rude talking about money?
I guess it was just kind of never really spoken about, and if you did sort of ask the question, you'd get it shut down pretty quickly. We didn't really have much of a say in anything to do with household finances or anything along those lines. I guess the grandparents were from the World War. The grandparents fought in World War, one in the British Navy, one in the Australian Navy, and they never really talked about it, money at all. And I think that just kind of came off again then on our parents, in the fact that you just don't talk about these things. It's not for the kids to know. It might have changed once we got to adult sort of years, I suppose. But again, by then we were sort of already off doing our own thing, my brother and I. They just never gave us the opportunity, really, I suppose, not through any fault of their own. I don't think they were deliberately doing it. They just thought it was something not for us.
Yeah. And how did that sort of manifest for you when you're older? You just also made a comment before that you thought you were going to be a lifelong renter. So what did that mean for you then? There's no conversations. It was something you didn't talk about. So you have to learn it via observation, osmosis, and what you find out through your life experiences with friends and whatever. So how did that go into first job? And then how come you had this reinforcement of you're going to be a lifelong renter?
Well, I'd always had, one of the things that was definitely instilled in me with both the grandparents and the parents is hard work. Like I said, both the parents worked full time. They worked really hard. They did it obviously for the family. Hard work was always instilled in me, and I was working since I was 13. I think I had my first job was washing dogs at a local vet clinic, and I'd do that every Saturday, and I continued doing that for, I think, 4 odd years. And then I had another job, and, I was working that as well. So I always worked hard. That's always something, even through all the troubles that I ended up having, my work ethic was never actually something that sort of was in doubt or didn't really work. So I think I just wanted to make my own money for myself and just sort of spend it how I wanted to spend it. Again, didn't end up happening the right way, but that's sort of what I learned, is just make your own money and keep it to yourself and do what you want with it, I suppose. I didn't really have too many lessons around money when I was growing up at all. It's a bit disappointing, and something I want to change for our kids, that's for sure.
And you referenced your mum, and she's a champion, right, for what she did for you. And was your mum in a position where she could have her own home, or was she renting?
No, yeah, she when the initial split happened, she moved out and rented, and then moved back into the house. I think it was, again, I don't really have too many details on what happened with them, but she did have her own house. There was a point in time where we were living with her, and then she actually, when she got with my now stepdad, they ended up moving in together, and he had a farm property, so moved out to the country. She actually bought a townhouse, which I was lucky enough to rent off of her for a long time, and at what I now understand would be significantly reduced rates, even though I thought they were horrifically high at the time. So now I guess you sort of realize that she was doing a lot in the background that I didn't know about. So she was out in the country by then, and I was sort of still in Metro Adelaide. So she did a lot that I didn't really I took for granted.
Well, single mums need statues built of them. They do amazing things, right? But so therefore, if your mum had a roof over her head, you had one. I'm just trying to lean in on where did you make the connection you're going to be a lifelong renter?
Well, eventually, mum had to sell the property I was renting off of her, and I'd sort of moved out and to rent on just the standard sort of way, not through your mum, and I just never had any money, mainly because with the habits I'd sort of accrued by then, it was actually the complete opposite of what we do now. I'd sort of go and figure out what is the cheapest way I can sustain myself in terms of food for the house. And then the rest of the paycheck goes towards the weekend, which would generally be not just 2 days, sort of 3 or 4, So that's how I sort of figured. I knew I had issues. I didn't want to deal with them. I just wanted to keep the party going, I suppose. And for that, I just figured as long as I paid my rent and paid my loan off, which I always did on time, I never missed it. That always came out straight away. And then as long as I paid that, I could just keep doing what I was doing. I had no real goals or aspirations to own a house until recently, really. Well, until I met Sabrina, and we sort of figured out a bit more of a lifelong plan.
Sounds like a knight in shining armor in terms of, meeting Sabrina and potentially seeing that there is a life outside of a great weekend. And, even though those experiences and memories can be fun, they can also trigger obviously more challenging aspects of, dealing with who you are and why you're here, and all of those other bigger stories, which we won't get into in today's show. But what's important for me there's a couple of themes that are coming through in terms of the winter series that we're seeing, and it's consistent with what we see in others, is that there's a work ethic and a focus on aspiration, right? There is that sort of I could be more. I didn't realize I could, but once I did, I could then turn my energy and my purpose towards that. And I think that's, it sounds like Sabrina was that for you in the sense that, there is more purpose than just living for the weekend. There is a purpose, in terms of going forward and creating a new journey. So this may be a difficult question to answer, but that hard work equals return. But did you work out that making your money work harder for you before you looked at the goal setting and the purpose? Or what order did they come into? Because normally for most people, it's like, give me a challenge and then I'll focus in on how I make it happen. But, when you're working hard and then Sabrina teaches you about making your money work harder for you and smashing debt, and then, okay, what do we do with this surplus income? How did that sort of, I suppose, transpire for you, Alex?
Yeah, well, it was a really tricky one, because to be honest, even when we did get together, I still had no real aspirations to grow wealth or anything like that. It was a bit sort of foreign to me. Sabrina obviously had the starting point. One of the things that sort of happened to me was having a couple of conversations, and he'll know exactly who he is because he listens to you guys. But one of my friends was together with his now wife since high school. Very, very good with money, very good with goal settings, put away really, really well. And now they have sort of, they've just finished building their sort of dream home on the foreshore, which was something that I sort of always wanted, but figured I'd never actually get there. He's got the investment properties as well, and they're just set up really, really well. And he's sort of 2 days older than me. And when we had a look at the comparison, he was still there with us throughout everything I was doing, but was sensible and was often driving and, doing all the things the right way. And I guess without sort of ever telling him that, but now I guess he'll know, it was kind of like almost a mentor from him in a way. And then with Sabrina, with the way that she'd had it planned, she planned her life. So, she knew she wanted to get married before she had kids. She knew she wanted to have a house before she got married. She's very, very goal orientated and likes things set out in a structure, which was never me. Now that we've sort of got the starting point, and I guess it's always easier once you actually have the one to continue on to the next one. When we started doing the consolidation of everything and seeing that we can actually save a bit of money, and she had a forward planning spreadsheet as well for budget tracking. So when we actually started seeing that we could do quite well if we put our minds to it, that was sort of a big turning point for me. But it's actually only been relatively recent, to be honest. It hasn't been a long time in the making. It's been relatively recent. It's still new to us, but we're actually realizing that we can do a lot, and we can go pretty far with what we've got.
And what was the feeling like when you did? Because it sounds like that experience you just described was that switch that got you over to aspiration. Did it feel like a whole new world had opened up to you? Can you describe sort of the days and the weeks following that sort of epiphany for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think before we got married, Sabrina had set a budget in place to save for the wedding, and we saved for the wedding and the big honeymoon. I think we ticked off a lot of countries on our honeymoon, so we saved for that. Didn't have relatively little to no help on actually paying for all of that. We did it all ourselves. And when we saw we could do that, we thought, well, if we can do that, we can probably do a fair bit with our money. I'm still obviously having a few issues through that time after the marriage and everything as well. We hadn't had the kids yet or anything like that, but it really sort of set in concrete the fact that we can save, we can do something. And then it's just sort of what we wanted to do after that, I suppose. We had the kids. Sabrina had always wanted to then eventually have some investment properties as well, which again was pretty foreign to me, except for speaking to my friend who was already doing it. She'd always had a plan, but it was always in a long-term plan. I think it's when I started listening to the podcast that we started to realize that this long-term plan doesn't have to be that long-term in terms of actually doing We can start it now and it'll be better for us in the long run. And she was on board with that. So I think she got sick of me saying, on the podcast, they say this. So she got sick of hearing it. So yeah, that's when we decided.
So was Sabrina listening as well, or
No, just me.
Yep.
I actually started listening to it when we refinanced again. We'd done a lot of our saving through a redraw account on our account. When I was just doing a little bit of research, I sort of saw something saying we could do something in offset. And then that's when I started looking into it a little bit. Thought about the investment property side of it, and I actually spoke to my friend who was the one that had been there and done it. I'd actually just found your podcast online, and I messaged him and said, what do you listen to, or what do you do? And he actually suggested you guys, which was I'd just opened. So that was a
bit of validation.
Yeah. So that was a bit of a light bulb moment when I stumbled across you guys, basically.
All right. So you've got you've got some Excel spreadsheets. Sounds like you've got money management. You've mastered the art of control and surplus capture. And Sabrina's doing some forward projections. What was it about getting some professional help? So what triggered you to actually, get someone to help you in terms of designing the lifestyle that you guys were aspiring to?
Well, it was more, and again, I'd sort of go back to my friend. He'd probably be a better person to interview than me, I suppose. But he actually did everything by himself pre-kids. And that was going to, every single open they could possibly get to in areas that they'd identified, all that sort of gear. When I sort of stumbled across you guys and started listening in real depth, we had a then 1 and 2 year old or a 2 and 3 year old, I think, at that time. And I just sort of said, we're so time poor. We both work full time. The kids are both in childcare full time, and once we pick them up, there's no spare time until they go to bed, and then by then you're knackered and you want to go to sleep anyway. And then weekends are just all about the kids. So we didn't have the time to do it. One of the things that we always had in common, I suppose, Sabrina and I, is we're happy to pay where we need to get a result. And we want someone that has a better idea than us to help us out with the work. So in the long run, we potentially could have done it, but it just would have been so draining on our time that it made much more sense to get someone who's actually a professional to help us. And then we ended up speaking with Stuart, and he was absolutely amazing. Can't speak highly enough of him, and neither would Sabrina if she was here. It just laid everything out. With Sabrina being a very goal-orientated person that I think I mentioned before, it gives her something to plan towards. And then I'm also an extremely highly competitive person when it comes to something as well. So it gives her something to aim towards, and it gives me something to try and beat. So
that's a lethal combination too, in the context of what we're talking about. If you've got someone who's making sure you swim between the flags, and then you're trying to outdo the plan, that is a very good trajectory that you're on. You mentioned that your mate was someone that you speak to and have as an obvious mentor, but a virtual mentor for a bit there. You talked about your brother earlier. Do you have conversations with your brother, or is there a bit of a hangover from the early days where talking about money's rude? You don't talk about it with the family?
No, we talk about it a little bit. He's actually moved over to Queensland now, so we don't speak as much as we obviously would have previously. He moved over for work over there, and then loved the lifestyle, and he's never coming back home. I'll tell you that much. He has bought himself a couple of properties as well, so he's actually had them for a while as well. I think they're quite high yielding properties over in Queensland, but we still never really spoke about it in depth. It's just kind of, I bought an investment property and okay, well done. And that was kind of it, When we talk, it's a bit more jovial and lighthearted, I suppose, and silly pictures and stuff like that, rather than in-depth sort of stuff. Unless we get together, then we might have a decent chat. But over the phone, it's a bit more lighthearted, I suppose. But they're building a new house now, same as us. We're both sort of building new houses. So it's an exciting time for both of us. But
who's the older brother? You?
Yeah, I'm the older brother.
Yeah.
He did very, very well for himself. He's moved over to Queensland, made a life through working in the mines, not actually mining as such, but working in electrical and fields around that. So quite well paying, and good opportunities for him over there. Yeah, but very, very interesting character. We're pretty much the same in terms of money. We'll say, yep, we did this, and then it's like, well done, and then case closed.
Yeah. Hey, Alex, how much does the plan help you from what you described before? Because on my 47 years on this earth, I've made observations. Both of my parents are still together, so I don't know this from lived experience, but it's just through observation that it's challenging, because we often refer to our same-sex parent for mentoring through life. And you mentioned before you didn't speak to your dad for a long time, so there's clues along the way there for you to get into the scenario that you've described. And we talked about how much of a credit it is to you that, you said 474 days and counting, where you've been dealing with that addiction. But how does the planning process help with you around that? Because again, I haven't had to deal with a major addiction, but again, my observations are around stories we tell ourselves and how we feel about ourselves and the way that we view ourselves in the world. How much does this provide you with the North Star to help you stay on 474 days and then get to 1,000 days and get to 2,000 days? How much does that play a part of your recovery?
It plays a lot, actually. Obviously, first and foremost, you want to try and do something like this for yourself and for your family around you. The fact that it has a huge financial benefit is a definite second in comparison to that, but it is a massive thing. There's actually apps that if anyone is going through it, you can track which is what I use to track the days, and then also you input the general units you'd have, and it'll show you how much you've actually saved over that time by choosing not to drink, and something like that's been really good to just go back and reflect on. I think it's a really good cause for anyone.
Wonderful progress, right?
Yeah, it is. It's massive. And then again, combined with my competitive sort of spirit, when I see that I should be earning or should be on this at the end of the month, and I want to beat it every single time. And luckily Sabrina's in the same boat as well. And that's sort of what we're working towards. It's a bit tricky with me. My pay is based largely on quarterly bonuses as well. So I have sort of 2 months where it's a little bit disappointing. And then the third month, once the quarter hits over, it starts to look good again. So I've got to kind of keep in mind that, these 2 months, wait for the next one. But it gave Sabrina another opportunity to start a new spreadsheet with tracking on how it goes month to month with estimates on those bonuses.
But that is a good point. I mean, obviously with the modelling you did with Stuart, did you bring that up to Stuart, and what was the response from him in regards to how did we treat that inconsistent income or that sort of what's a better way of sort of lump sum, flat lump sum, flat. What was the way in which we treated that, in terms of your model?
So we put it in and obviously planned it in that it would go like that. It is a bit trickier when with the particular modeling and through things like Money Smarts, which we use and really enjoy. It is a bit trickier. He just sort of said, just make sure you're focusing on your quarterly. And then also once you've been doing it for a while, it's your annual return. That's what you need to focus on. So
and adding on to that that's exactly right. But also making sure that there's a buffer, that the buffer is adequate in the sense that we're not going backwards or putting any stress in terms of that. So any planning you should do with any professional should make sure that there's an ample buffer in terms of reserves, so you're not living paycheck to paycheck, or the deck of cards can't collapse because of a short-term impact on cash flow. Is a really, really big point. So that's all awesome information. I want to come back to you are aligned now. You mentioned that in terms of, was that always the case when you started to think about big rocks in the jar and you started to think about, those big ticket items when you were planning? Did you both have similar aspirations around what they would be?
Yeah, I think so. That was one thing that we definitely had in common, and was one of the reasons we ended up sort of getting together. I suppose she ended up being my travel agent for a while when she was a travel agent. We're both very travel orientated. We love to go overseas and, I sort of mentioned previously that initially I'd taken out loans to go overseas and things like that, but now it's obviously saving to do it. Yeah. One of the big things for us is travel, and you probably see it in any plan that you look on ours. There's healthy allowances for them. One thing we are big on is definitely the memories, and being able to. I think that's the experiences. I think you've said it before. Experiences are worth their weight in gold, and that's one thing that we love. It is expensive. It's an expensive habit to have, but it's a good one, and one that we do want to bring onto our kids as well. I think living in Australia, we're very lucky and very sheltered from some of the other stuff that goes on around the world. And I think being able to take the kids around and remind them you're actually pretty lucky to be where you are is a big focus of ours. So we're planning the trip to Africa with the girls when they're old enough to sort of really know what's going on. I think something like that's a bit of an eye opener, and I've never been there. Sabrina has, but things like that. Travel was always a big one for us.
Where did you get the epiphany that experiences and not stuff was important? Because a lot of people succumb to the stuff versus the experiences.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I was ever really overly interested in things. And again, even when I was going through what I was going through, it was all really experiences rather than, going out and buying the flashiest car. And, I did the boy thing. I had a couple of sports cars growing up and, did those sort of things. But eventually I just kind of moved on. I thought that travel was a better way to experience life than having these things. And, they obviously travel is once your money's done, it's done, but the memories are there forever. Probably, I think, a better investment than something that, 20 years down the track is probably not going to be worth next to anything.
The research backs that up, that the memories you create through those experiences far exceed the memories that you get from stuff. So you are well on the money there.
Yeah. Alex, I want to use these last couple of minutes to, 10 minutes, 15 minutes to just talk about some of the content in the plan in terms of what you guys put together. So you are building that dream home at the moment. So you'll be moving into that at the end of this year, looking at the models here. In terms of the overall target, what's your target?
So initially, when we'd sort of spoken to Stuart, we did come in as sort of the book says, the $2,000 a week, and that would be perfect for us. Speaking with Stuart, he said, there is the opportunity to do a little bit better here. And one of the good things that Stuart did is he didn't just run with one particular plan for us. We had a couple of different plans there, and he sort of broke it down. One, the house we're building is going to be a beautiful home, and we're happy to live there. We did have another plan, which would be something where we did have an absolute beachfront house in the western suburbs of South Australia. Of Adelaide, sorry. Stuart was very good in explaining that, yes, we can do that. And it turns out we could have done it and had the single property, but it would have involved pretty much a sell down of our portfolio over time, which wouldn't really have left us with a great house. But we actually decided that it was more important for us to be able to do the experiences, the travel, be able to have a good backing behind us, to have that disposable and passive income coming in. And that was really kudos to him, I think, was talking us through that, because, it could have very easily been like no, you must do it this way. And it definitely wasn't. He guided us, and it turns out we're more than happy to live where we're building. It's why we're building such a nice house. Yeah. We thought that we might just be able to go to the next level. But in the long-term plan, it wasn't the way to go. So we had initially gone in with 100. It actually turned out that Stuart, with what he could do, was with us retiring early, was to get us to around about 140. Through some further conversations, we actually decided that retiring early might not be totally for us. By the time we're that age anyway, it's probably gone up. The retirement age has probably gone up again anyhow, but retiring, it comes back, I guess, to me a little bit in that the idle hands can be the devil's playpen as well. And I'm probably not the person to be sitting around not doing anything. So we decided that I would work till 65 rather than 60, which is what we'd initially planned. And Sabrina would retire at the same time as me, which meant she retires at 63, being 2 years younger. And by doing that and speaking with Stuart, it actually allowed us to have enough to get an extra property in the portfolio, which then took our total to 180, which is well above what we thought we'd be capable of, especially with the amount of properties. We thought we'd have to do far more than that to be able to get to somewhere like that. So we were very, very pleased with the outcome, to say the least. I'd sort of only mentioned to Stuart in passing that, if we can get more, we'll take more, Stuart. But we honestly didn't think we would. But it turns out an extra couple of years working from each of us makes a huge difference in the long run.
Now, it's an audio podcast, so we need to give context of age. So you're 34 and Sabrina's 32.
Yep.
As we record this, so that just gives you an idea of that's 30 odd years of work that's going into what you're building out. And the longer you work, I mean, we talk about the 4 levers: income, expenditure, time, and target. Right now, I did see in your initial notes when you met with Stuart was retire early. And here's the difference between the decisions that you've made versus what your mate's done. He did a lot of that heavy lifting early, and he does now have that luxury of having both outcomes. Now, again, we can't change the past. No judgment in regards to that. But what we are talking about here is, okay, from this point forward, now we've got a roadmap in terms of where we want to get to. I've got a quick question in here around when you scratch the itch about the beachfront property versus the other property and you saw the models, how did that play out for you in terms of, okay, and if you didn't do that scenario, would that still be in the back of your mind, just sort of living there as we still probably want to look at that? So when you got those models, was it the numbers that showed the story, or was it just Stuart saying, you're just going to have to sell everything? What was the sort of trigger?
It was a bit of both, really. We wanted to have that portfolio there to support us throughout the rest of our lives, and also probably be able to leave a bit of a legacy piece to the kids as well. Whereas if we were to leave, who knows, if we only had the single house and the kids, I don't think they will, but if they grew up hating each other, what's going to happen when we kick it? There's one property left there that they're going to fight over, or something along those lines. It was just, we thought it was better to look after the future more so than just that big want. We don't feel like we're overly missing out by not having the beachfront home. I mean, our house that we're building is a 2-minute walk to West Lakes, and then it's a 5-minute drive to the beach anyway. So it's right in between. So it's a good spot. So we can't really complain. I think this is a good thing about with what my mate has done is that, some people I think can get caught up in comparing themselves and keeping up with the Joneses, as they say, and all of that sort of gear. Whereas we sort of used it as a bit more motivation into what we could do. It probably is a good lesson for any of the listeners, though, in the fact that me and him are basically exactly the same age, and look at the difference that 10 years can make. So if anyone's out there and they're thinking about doing it, probably go in early. I'm the perfect example. We could have been in the same spot, but not so much because we waited a little bit longer. So
and again, no judgment for those people who that decade may have just passed them, but start today, act today. Right, this is the point. Once you aligned and you saw what you're about to do, you took action, and then you just built momentum. That first step, and built momentum.
Yeah, and that was a really good thing about doing this plan, is that I mentioned that Sabrina had always had the plan to have a couple of investment properties down the track. And when we initially started looking into it, we were sort of thinking, we'll get one in 5 years or another one in 10 years or something like that. Then when I actually started listening to the podcast, I said to Sabrina, like, from what I'm hearing, we should be doing this now, because there's this thing called compounding, which I'd never understood in my life. And we can get in and get it started now, get it all over and done with, and then we can reap the benefits later on, which was really good having a professional plan done, because then that laid it out to someone that's as detail orientated and number driven as Sabrina, to actually have it laid out in front of her and think, well, instead of buying one in 5 years, I think our plan has us finishing our purchases in 5 years, or just over 5 years. So
I'll run through that in a minute, but that's exactly right. Bryce, did you have something?
Well, I was just going to say, our mantra is it's never, generally for most people, it's never too late, but start as early as you can. I mean, there's an investor in the States by the name of James Simons. He's worth 21 billion. And as we're chatting now, Warren Buffett's worth about 117 billion. So on the scorecard, Warren's got more money, but James Simons has had a compounding growth annually since 1988 of 66%. Whereas in the same time, Warren is 22%, which is
these are staggering numbers. And again, let's not compare ourselves to
there's a point here, right? There's a point. So the point is that Warren Buffett, as it isn't actually even the best investor in the world, even though that's the tag he gets. What he does better than anyone else is he's been investing since he was 10, has been investing for an extraordinary amount of time. So if you actually did the maths on James Simons, if you'd been investing the same amount of time as Warren, the number is mind-blowingly off the charts. The number looks ridiculous, but the only difference between the two of them is largely time, because James didn't hit his investing stride till he was in his 50s. Hey, did you enjoy the process, Alex? Because what we learn here, right, is you're scratching a bunch of itches. Do I scratch the waterfront itch? Do I do what I'm doing here itch? And I think part of the benefit of being able to plan is you get to scratch itches on paper, rather than going down a 10-year journey of scratching an itch and then going, wrong pathway, and then realizing that I can't get those 10 years back. So did you enjoy the process? Did you enjoy the scenarios?
I did. It makes it a lot easier to understand. I mean, having someone else as a sort of an independent third party, rather than two highly emotional people when they're talking about it in a couple or a husband-wife relationship, it just puts a little bit more clarity on it, and it makes things make sense a lot more. Sometimes it's nice to be told, yes, you can, but really should you? Because otherwise we might have just gone down the track of, let's go for that one big thing and to hell with the rest of it. Having a voice of reason almost, I think is a brilliant thing to do. And it was very enjoyable to do, very enjoyable to see what the potential could be for both of the scenarios, more so, I think, for the one that we ended up going with. But yeah, very enjoyable. We had a good time doing it.
We, as part of the training that I do with the team, I've often referred to, we care, but we don't care that much. And like, we do have a business that absolutely cares about the customer. So that's my way of triggering their engagement in terms of what I'm about to, teach them and coach them on. And that is that we are the independent party, okay? But if we have the emotional connection to the decisions like our customers do, then ultimately we might fall into the same trap of not necessarily showing the correct path. And the customer is ultimately always going to make their tailored solution and their decision in terms of where that sits. But what I'm sort of saying is you want to care, but you want to care to a point where it's like, show them the scenarios and then let them and help guide them. Because if the scenarios do come into spending more, the consequences is that you're just going to need more time, right? Ultimately you're going to be working longer. And so that is that, we call it the accountability partner as a trusted advisor. But so you want to care, but you also need to be that independent person in that room to sort of say, that's, and ask some of those tough questions. And we talk about high-fiving you on the things you do really well and eyeballing you on the things that we're sort of saying, really? Can we do a little bit better there? And that really is the benefit of having professional guidance as opposed to potentially trying to do it yourself. So I just wanted you gave me a nice little segue into there, Alex, in terms of, sharing that, because people might say, yeah, I can do this myself. And as you said, we're time poor and we could have done it, quicker ourselves and eventually ourselves, but it would have taken longer. And then it would just, we would have been kicking the can down the road in terms of what that looks like. So my last question to you before I do go through your numbers in a little bit more detail, to sort of give context for the broader story here is, what else would you say to people who are in a similar situation to you? And, the message that you've given some great messages to the community already, and that is start early. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to that conversation around the value that you've got and maybe the peace of mind that you've got as well?
I think it's just a little bit, it's all about the mindset at the end of the day. I grew up in the wrong mindset for most things. Being able to change that and finding a reason to do it is a good one. Obviously, like I said before, yourself and your family are obviously the number one. But just being able to find that little thing that sort of makes you tick. And I think at the end of the day, it was my competitiveness that probably did make a tick. It's, it can be bad at some points in time, but in this sort of thing, it was
winning can be fun.
Yeah, exactly. Winning is fun. But it's all just see what's going on around you as well. Like I said, I had talks with my friend. I never really did anything or planned to do anything about it, but learn from the people around you. And then if you need it, just put yourself out there and do what you need. But if you need help doing it, go get it. It's brilliant. It makes things so much easier.
Alex, can I use your example as a message to send to our community? Because with the planning, it's all about behaviour management, because Ben and I have been involved with over 3,000 plans over the journey, right? And so the difference between those that fulfill the plan and those that don't fulfill the plan is largely around their ability to manage their behaviour. So I guess, and you more so than anyone live this acutely around managing behaviours, right? Not just in financial terms. But what do you think would be the potential derailers for you around behaviour management with money? Because if you continue to do what you're doing, you will fulfill your plan. You will get the $3,000 a week. What are the things that you and Sabrina are mindful of, which could be your derailers around the behaviour mange?ment?
Wanting to go on too many holidays would probably be the one thing. Try and avoid any of the sales from Flight Centre. I think it probably just is that really. We are very focused to do this and very glad we've got an end in sight. The derailers for us are obviously slippage. If we were to get promotions or anything like that, we don't want a sort of lifestyle creep as well, where it sort of follows you up. We want to keep running those numbers and to not only just equal the plan, but to beat the plan. If we can bring those couple of houses forward a little bit, or particularly the one at the end, if we can bring it forward a year, then it gives us an extra year of the compounding effect. It gives us more time. It really all just is about trying to beat everything, I think.
Well, the best part about it is that the interest rates and all of that are exaggerated. Like the longer term interest rates after the short term is 6.5%. So you're going to, I suspect you're going to beat that.
Yeah. That was something that Stuart really did quite well with us, was explain that, hey, we put in much larger than usual buffers into this, and it's a really good way to run with it, because the conservative approach is much better in the long run, and it again makes beating it a little bit easier. But Sabrina it's funny when Sabrina talks to some of her friends that have and family who have just recently bought properties, and they're worried about interest rates, and she sort of said, well, when I did this, I was paying 5.5% on, and they're all shocked, and so. In one step, we've already been there, obviously not as high as some of the ones in previous years, but Sabrina's sort of been there when they have been a lot higher than what they are now. And it was only a matter of time. And I think some people just need to realize that it was always going to happen. That was never going to stay with the way it was.
Yes, that's true. I mean, it's been 11 and a half years or thereabouts that we hadn't seen interest rates increase. They've all been on the trajectory downwards. And look, this is normal interest rates, 5.5%. So, we're going to normalise back into that particular area. Hey, I just want to make sure, Alex, if it's all right with you, am I able to give a range of household income?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Fantastic. So we're sort of in that sort of 180, 185 range at the moment in terms of what that looks like. And now I can sort of unpack your story from a property point of view. So we've got the existing property there, which we bought previously. Then we've got the new owner-occupied property that we're going to complete by the end of this year. We're going to obviously add to that investment property portfolio with another purchase with a targeted price in today's dollar terms is $650. We're looking to buy that the middle of next year. Then we've got a third investment property for $500,000 in today's dollar terms for early 2025. And then we've got a fourth property, which is the one you talked about, which really does give us that kicker, for $475 in today's dollar terms. But we're looking to buy that in 2030, which means that obviously that is going to be at future pricing points based on a 5% growth target on that. But that's also got a strong 4.5% yield on that as well. In terms of your spending and the assumptions that we've made, we've got the big holiday. As you're saying, the Africa holiday built in there, bit of eye surgery built in as well. We've got the car replacements, and we've also got a nice little gift for each of the girls, a milestone gift in there of $20,000 for each of them in today's dollars, which will obviously be indexed into future dollars in 2043 and 2044. What's the expectation of that gift? Is that the deposit for their new property, or is it a car deposit? What are you thinking with that?
No, so that will, and this is something else that my friend and I have discussed, that'll either be for property or education, one or the other.
Yeah, love it.
Really, it's something that we've put aside. We actually, this is where we go a little bit against Money Smarts in that we actually have two separate accounts. They're both offsets, but they're both sit on the main offset account. And that's for one each, building that money in there so we can sort of see how it's going. But yeah.
Oh, look, that is a great tip, Alex. I've always said to people who are like, I've got these different apps and I'm managing spreadsheets and all that. You don't need any of that. Just put all of the money into the offset and run a tracking tool or set it up into separate buckets if you've got a bank account that has multiple offsets attached to it. It's a simple way of doing it. And at the end of the day, the kids are going to inherit the properties. The legacy piece is going to come through. So it's actually pretty good that they're helping the family reduce their interest. And then ultimately they're going to see it paid in spades in terms of the wealth that they're going to continue to build on for their next generations and the generations that you and Sabrina are going to create through that family tree. So I've always been a big advocate of that. I think I can teach them money behaviours in terms of cash in hand and delayed gratification. But I would always say, separate bank accounts. I'd prefer to have all of the money in one centralized area because you make more money or save more money out of it. Yeah. So nice little tip.
And hopefully they don't hear this podcast because it's going to be a surprise. So.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, they can't be in the car when you're listening, right? That's right. Yeah.
Hey, Alex, as we round this out, it's been quite a journey, mate. You've obviously there's a big story that you've gone through in your formative years to your mum being in a position to do a champion job for you, to going through some challenges in marriage to be where you are now. What would you take internally as the biggest takeaway from you for you? What do you think your mum would say to think that, all of the hard toil and struggle that she went through to give you a platform and an opportunity for now to see you thriving and being in a situation? What do you think her view would be?
I should probably say about time. The funny thing is, no matter how poorly I acted and the things that I did, Mum always sort of had my back there, and I know Sabrina was the same with her dad in particular, and she was always really supportive of me, Mum. So she knows where we're going now, and in the general direction, we're a bit. This is a bit unusual coming on here because we are quite reserved about speaking about this sort of stuff, probably again because of the way that we sort of grew up. But we've let them know what we're planning in a little bit of detail, and you can just see it written all over their face that they're pretty happy with the way things are going. So
awesome story.
Well, if your mum gets to hear this one, mate, good on your mum. You're a legend. So, but on behalf of everyone who's listening to this story, Alex, on behalf of me and Ben and everyone here at the team, we are very grateful, mate. You just said that you find this stuff difficult to talk about, and yet you've been incredibly transparent. And these little things that you say, there's a point that you said 20 minutes ago, there's something you said 5 minutes ago, there's something you said at the top of the chat that'll resonate with someone who's listening to this, and they'll go, and that becomes a catalyst for them to make change and move forward and use you as a virtual mentor, like your mate has been for you. You will be for them, mate. So well done, nice work. What a wonderful story that you've shared. And on behalf of everyone here, mate, thanks for swinging by the property couch.
No, thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Alex. And Sabrina, if you're listening, go girlfriend.
Yeah.
Awesome. Unbelievable. So
Unsung
yeah,
hero
we
here.
love it. Yeah,
Definitely. So yeah, sung more often than not, I think. So yeah.
Good. Nice one. Thanks again. Woo. Wow. Mate, there was so much that we can talk about here, but there was some transformations on many levels there, Ben, and 474 days is incredible in itself.
Yeah.
And as we said when we were at the end of that interview, we were talking to Alex and saying look forward to it being when it's day 1474, and I think part of the journey that Alex has been on, and part of the anchoring with all of these life decisions that was able to have some forethought into and planning and direction, is also, you could see from the conversation that it's forming a very strong grounding anchor to the principle that Alex wants to achieve is his health and his well-being, and for the benefit of his family, Ben.
And to make that story public, Bryce, is so powerful in so many ways. And I say that for everyone that's been on the winter series, is when you actually make a public statement, people can hold you to that, to account for that. And in Alex's case, it's going to be great because they'll give him that love and support that he needs in those difficult times. But it's also something that you've, like I know when I've made a public statement, or when I've done my own planning and I've put it down in writing, because again, once you've written it down, it resonates. But when you actually tell your accountability partner, or when you've got an accountability partner as part of that story, it increases your probability of actually hitting that number or hitting that story. And so Alex, through doing that, hopefully will also see that return to him in spades in terms of showing that vulnerability and making that story public. So credit to the guys. I mean, it's really clear in terms of what floats their boat: experiences, travel, those types of things as well. And to have a partner like Sabrina who, just basically, holds that glue together, is interested in, sort of that aspiring Australian story, that success story that they are becoming, is really, really wonderful. And looking at the pre-notes from the first actual meeting, the sit down, they wanted to retire earlier. But that actually changed once that line of sight and that data was shown to them and the scenarios were moved through. So now it's a 65 age. Now, it could happen earlier, but ultimately, the longer that they go, as we say, that third, fourth generation where that compounding takes effect is a really, really strong story here. So my clear takeaways are this: success leaves clues. He mentioned that, right? And model the behavior of others. So there is a really clear sign in here in terms of his mate that he's just been seeing. So he's watched from afar the sacrifices, similar type of upbringing, one in a far better position, but he's not sort of then saying, I can't do it now. My journey is a different journey, and I'm still taking action now, rather than so many people are, oh, that can't be me now, so that horse is bolted. Well, that's complete rubbish, right, in terms of that. But his message to us was start as early as you can. Start when you realize it's not too late. But model the behavior of others. Get confidence around what they're doing. And I think, Alex and Sabrina are going to also be advocates, future advocates of sort of saying, this is possible for you too. Yes, there is some compromise and some sacrifice and a little bit of delayed gratification, but those kids are going to, in terms of their future, it's looking really good. So, mate, I thoroughly enjoyed our extensive chat with Alex, and I want to commend him again for instilling in, I just get buzzed by, I get pumped by, these types of stories of transformation. So I just love it, and that's why I love doing the work we do.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree. And the scratching of itches, Ben, building their dream home now, they scratch the itch on whether they should build it on the beachfront and what that actually meant for them. And sort of undid conditioning that I was going to be a lifelong renter. And then obviously we've put a stake in the ground for people to aspire to, so they can do that 2,000 a week, and went down that path of 2,000 a week, and then realized I can actually stretch this to 3,000 a week as well, and see what opportunities that has. Because the big rock in the jar was to give experiences to his kids for him and Sabrina to give experiences to their kids. So they factored all those holidays in, and that was something that was really, really important. So, yep, I agree. Early days, he said, money went in the wrong direction. I think you can clearly say that money is now going in the right direction. But what was really poignant was early days, the conversations were, to quote unquote, it was rude talking about money in the household. It was just, it was a kind of a form of just mind your own business, right? So, which is why anyone who's a coucher, Ben, who's been listening to us for a long time, part of our community, will know our interviews now for the last couple of years have always started with, take us back to the beginning. Let us know what the conversations were like at the kitchen table. We're doing that on purpose, folks. There is a strategy there. Make no mistake, Ben and I have a strategy there, because we are trying to uncover conversations at the dinner table so that we can have our, I guess, our legacy in opening up conversations that parents are having with their kids, so that they can say, well, money's not a taboo, Ben. Money isn't a taboo we should be talking about.
Yeah, and we want to say that just because you've developed a young money habit or a young money behavior, you can change habits and behaviors, right? So you can say that doesn't define who I am. But that's why I have these feelings around money. Great, we acknowledge them, and let's start doing the mind shifting work that we need to do, and the behavioral and habit work that we need to do to change that. Because, Bryce, my belief here, everybody in this country has an opportunity to achieve financial well-being. Like the decisions that you make, the judgment calls that you make allow you to ultimately form your pathway to your destination. And I don't care what incomes you earn, there is choices that need to be made along that way that will improve your financial position. And that is the bedrock of everything that we do in terms of, our crusade, and the mission that we're on, in terms of saying that we don't care how much you earn. Sure, we acknowledge that the more you earn, the more opportunity there is. But even if you don't earn a lot, you can still make a difference to your future financial well-being by the decisions that you make with your money around how you put it to work, how much you trap, and how you put it to work. And yes, there are sacrifices for a lot, very few for some who are very high income earners, or they're inheriting a lot of money. But that is the greatest joy we get in terms of helping those people who are middle Australians, but who have aspirations of changing their situation, and then building that legacy for the next generation to build on. So, that to me is what we're here for. And if I use, Alex's point around, he sought to say, we actually could have done it ourselves, I suppose, but we're a bit time poor. But an interesting part of that is they did seek an independent party to help them. They did say, if we want to have honest conversations, maybe, that conversation could be with a trusted advisor as part of that story, right? If we're not completely on the same page in terms of working out what our priorities, get that independent partner that's coming in there to care, but also say, have honest conversations with you around, that's true, but this is the consequences, or that's true, and this is the scenario. So then everyone goes, okay, right. So the beachfront location, step back. Good. Are we really happy with the house? Great. We've had it validated from an independent party. Let's move into, okay, let's start building some wealth sensibly over a long period of time, and let's come up for oxygen, and let's, be able to enjoy those travel experiences that are, that we're going to have the ample money for, in 10, 20, 30 years time.
So let's wrap our arms around the community, Ben. Let's give them some resources. So if people are listening to this winter series have only heard this episode, or they might have just been listening to the winter series, there's a couple of things we can do. We can give them an opportunity to help them trap their surplus. So if you go to makemoneysimpleagain.com.au, you can download our book for free, where it gives you the instruction manual on actually how to implement our Money Smart system that helps people trap surplus. And then as part of that process, part of that registration process, we'll make an offer to you to use our online platform that'll do it all automatically for you, again, for free. So that baseline system is for free. So we can, to fulfill on what you just said before, Ben, we can help people make a difference in their own life. So secondly, then once you've trapped the surplus, you need to do something with it. You can either spend it on lifestyle, or you can put a little bit away for tomorrow, Ben. If you're in the put it away for tomorrow camp as well, go to the armchairguide.com.au and you can get a free copy of our book. a physical book. We'll put it in the post to you. If you pay for postage, we'll send the book out to you. And then you can read, once you've trapped the surplus, how to invest in property. And that's for $2,000 a week. So there's a couple of opportunities there too, Ben. Now, we strongly believe in the planning process, Ben. We are biased because we've seen it. We've done thousands and thousands of these plans, and we see the wonderful impacts that they have. So if you've been listening to this and you actually want to do that, I would suggest a couple of things. Go and find someone who is independent and can actually help you with the planning. Now, we have a business, it's called Empower Wealth. If you go to empowerwealth.com.au, you leave your details, we can help you there. But irrespective of whether it's us, Ben, or someone else, just go and seek someone
fee for service,
capable, competent, independent. We can help you with that.
Fee for service. Don't have it wrapped in some type of hidden commission or how they're going to make their money elsewhere. You want an independent umpire who has hopefully a QPIA, Qualified Property Investment Advisor status, and they will model your numbers and they will talk to you about your tailored plan. Your story is unique, what you want to do. They shouldn't be shoehorning you into trying to flog you a property or doing anything like that. Your numbers are your numbers. Your decisions are your decisions. But having that accountability partner that can model the scenarios for you and say, this is the consequence of that decision, or this won't work because of this, that they're using, a good, reasonable buffers and sensible assessment in terms of having some safety nets there, making sure that that's also true. If you can get that type of advisor, you're on the right path, because ultimately, they're getting paid for the professional advice and work that they're doing. They're not getting paid through a kickback or a commission or any other way. And then you get clear line of sight in terms of what your options are. And then hopefully, as we've always talked about, we've got a 5-step process, and so should anyone you're talking to, which is really about understanding your potential opportunity, making a plan, and then putting that plan into action and keep reviewing that plan. In our case, we talk about clarify, evaluate, plan, implement, and manage is our 5-step process that we use with the clients who come and see us.
And the fourth thing we can do here, Ben, is we'll ask Stiggy and the team to put in the show notes. There was a presentation that you and I did to CPA Australia. It's had over 100,000 views on our YouTube channel. And what that does is it goes through, I talk at the beginning about the setting up the scene, and then you go through and you show the planning process. So you can actually see what it looks like. So
a bit younger back in those days, but
what's that?
Yes, I said I was a bit younger back in those days, but it's it's a really good.
Well, it's actually an evergreen. It's actually proof that the concepts that we talked about when we did that, which was some time ago, as you said, are still as relevant today as they ever are.
They're timeless.
And you can go and have a watch of that and get at your leisure and have a bit of a sense. There's no opt-in, nothing. You just can go and watch that and get a bit of a sense of looking under the bonnet of that. That was back in the days when we did on Excel spreadsheets, Ben, where the calculations were vast, whereas now we've put it up in
our models are a lot more sophisticated these days.
Put it up in the cloud. So we'll do that too, folks. So if you're getting the sense that we want you to plan to become what you plan to become, that is true. And so there's some resources that are available for you, no matter which stage you are currently at. So hopefully that's of help to you. But just want to say thanks to our guests, Kim, Anthony, Jack, and Alex, and of course their extended partners who weren't part of the conversations, but definitely part of the stories, which is wonderful. So thank you to those crew. Just so as a footnote, Ben, we tried to get as many females on as we could, males as well. So it just seems to be at the moment the lads are putting their hands up. But I want to shout out to all the ladies who want to share their story. Please let us know. We would love to feature you on the Property Couch as well. But mate, it's been a terrific series. Hopefully the community, there is takeaways hopefully for everyone in that. But I guess the point here too, Ben, is some of the stories that we covered in the winter series were folks that were on really healthy household incomes. And that's great. They've got great opportunity. But we also want to say to folks that if you don't have the same level of healthy income that you heard on some of those stories, don't let that be a reason for you to not at least find out what opportunities actually exist for you, because trapping surplus is available to everyone. Making good choices with that trapped surplus is available for everyone, irrespective of what your income is. So that's the wonderful thing about living in Australia, Ben. You get an opportunity under our system of free enterprise to have a swing and have a go and give yourself an opportunity to set yourself up for a self-funded retirement. So, mate, good 4 weeks, right? There you go, folks. Well, again, it's always a joy and a privilege to look under the bonnet and see some wonderful stories of transformation, mate. But
Bryce, segue.
Yep. Oh,
hey, next week we're into a big show.
Means a lot to us. Probably everyone else just goes, yeah, whatever. But what, are we hitting a milestone, Ben, or something?
We are. We've got our 400th episode of the Property Couch. It's been going for a long time now, and a cracking guest. When you talk about overcoming challenges, I'll just leave it at that. It is an epic story of great mindset and attitude to just basically be what you can be, under very, very challenging circumstances.
There you go, folks. There's a little teaser. 400 next week's big for us. We've got a big guest to celebrate that important milestone internally for us. If anything, hitting 400, Ben, that you and I can still chat each week regarding one of our most favourite topics. But stick around for that. It will be a blinder next week for us. But until next week.
Knowledge is empowering, Bryce, but only if you act on it.
See you next week, folks.
Hey guys, Bryce here again. Just want to catch you before you go and let you know, if you're new to our community, there are a lot of episodes to catch up on, but it's really important that you start from the very beginning at episode number 1, because episode 1 through to 20 share all of the foundational pillars and frameworks that you need to know to get the best out of listening to this podcast. So I'd recommend that you start there, and the little tip is to maybe start on 1.5 speed. Now, for those of you that are time poor and don't have time to go back from the beginning, don't worry, we've got you covered as well, because we've created a binge guide that goes through all of the details and makes it easy for you to read and get up to speed very, very quickly. So if you go to thepropertycouch.com.au/fast track, you will be able to download that binge guide and you will be up to speed in no time. And whilst you're there, I've got a few extra goodies for you, because we have our top 5 frameworks that you'll learn on this podcast, as well as the Make Money Simple Again ebook, which will help you with the foundations of basic money management, so you'll have everything you need to succeed in building your own lifestyle design and getting the best out of this podcast. Now, just a reminder that anything that we cover on this podcast is not considered financial advice. We certainly recommend that you get your unique circumstances looked at by your individual advisor, and everything we talk about is just general in nature. But folks, I want to encourage you again to go to thepropertycouch.com.au/fast track, and you can go and get all those goodies and catch up right away.